Hey folks, this is Randy with Dulin Cut Trim, and this is episode 2 of Q&A with Randy. I want to do like a cool intro, like Gary Vaynerchuk, like cool music. You have questions, and I answer them. This is the Randy D Show, and then come to my face and be like, hello everybody, this is Randy Dulin, and this is the Ask Randy D Show. And then fade to gray and talk to somebody. If you haven't seen the Ask Gary V show, you should watch it. It's pretty enjoyable. But if you haven't, then that whole thing was really stupid to you. So sorry. So I got this question. It says, weekly versus bi-weekly lawns. Difference in pricing, pros and cons of each. So I got a rule on this, but I pretty much never follow it. And so I'll just use it in terms of my service minimum. So my service minimum is $35 per cut. And the way I've got that organized, 95% of the lawns that I service, that's how much I charge. So for weekly lawn, I'll tell them $35. And then my rule is bi-weekly starts at $45. But I almost never do that. Because the way my business is set up, the lawns I service are so small. I'm typically only actually mowing for less than 10 minutes per lawn. Most of the time is spent trimming and then blowing, but the actual time on a mower, because the properties are tiny, it's like 7 or 8 minutes of actual mowing time. You should see the hour meter on my mower. It's insane how many lawns I've cut and how few hours are on that thing. So because that's the case, generally speaking, if a customer wants to go to bi-weekly, if I have to do a little bit of extra work, if the grass is a little bit longer, it's not enough extra work for me to justify charging $10 more. So my rule is $45 for bi-weekly cuts. But I generally don't do that. Well, let me back up. That's not true. There are a couple caveats on that. For my business, I have what I consider a primary service area. There's 3 zip codes in that primary service area. And for that primary service area, these are the customers that get my get preferential treatment because they're in the exact area I want to be in. That rule, I pretty much don't bump it up to $45 for them. Generally speaking, I don't. Once you get out of that priority area, those 3 zip codes, that's when I'll implement the $10 upcharge for biweekly. So once you go out an additional zip code from those places, that's where I'm much more likely to go up to $45. The one caveat on that is I have several townhouses that I service. I don't bump them up for bi-weekly service. Honestly, $35 to service a townhouse is kind of ridiculous. So I'm not going to insult these people by bumping it up to $45 if they only want to pay every 2 weeks. At a certain point, you're just being greedy, I think. So that's how I handle it. As far as pros and cons go, the pro of weekly is you make more money. Let's say I'd say I did bump a bi-weekly lawn up to $45 per cut. Well, then that account would be worth $90 a month, generally speaking, but the $35 a month account would be worth $140. You're not going to make up that difference. And anybody that tries to make up that difference, I've heard of guys doing this where it's like weekly's $35, bi-weekly's $70. Well, dude, that's stupid. Who would do that? No, you're never going to get a customer to do that unless they're equally as dumb. It's just, no one would do that. Yeah. So, but I think $10 upcharge is probably, the best. And, a lot of customers, they don't want to, they want to save money on their lawns because, you know, generally speaking, there are a lot of people out there that really do care about their lawn. But generally speaking, in my area, a large percentage of my customers, they're just people, they don't want the county bothering them. So they just want to get their grass cut. They don't care if it's striped. I mean, I still do that, you know, for that value added, but they don't care. They just don't want it to be long. You know, that's all they care about. So, you know, it actually is kind of interesting. I changed my online conversion process this year, but I'm not paying for the most expensive version of the software I'm using, so I'm limited on some of the features. And so last year, a sales technique I used was when a customer would contact me for a quote, when I would send them the quote, or when I was talking to them, I actually would never bring up how much or I would never bring up the frequency of mowing. I would just never bring it up, and then on the agreement, I would just put it as weekly and send it to them, and then put it on them to respond back and say, oh, I'd actually like it for bi-weekly. And when I did that, I noticed the majority of the customers I got, they just left it. They were like, all right, weekly, and they went with it. This year, with the online form I use, it gives them an option for frequency, and I'm not able to edit that at the current price point I'm at with that software. And so almost all the quote requests I get say they want it bi-weekly. So that's just an interesting little side note that has absolutely nothing to do with your question. Obviously, weekly's better. You get more money that way. The one nice thing about having bi-weekly lawns, and this is something I try to do, I fail at it, but I try to do this, is I try and get all the bi-weekly lawns on the same week. So it kind of gives me a hard week, easy week, hard week, easy week. I like doing that, but, you know, that pretty much never works out. So I hope that answers your question. If anybody else has any questions you'd like to ask, leave them in the comments or shoot me an email at randy@dulincutandtrim.com. And unless your question is absolutely ridiculous or has been asked before, we'll feature it on this series. So I hope this was helpful to you. This is Randy with Dulin Cut and Trim. Have a good one.